we're going to be doing something different as we head into week 9. We're going to be looking at the top fantasy producers from week 8. We're going to be going over the running backs, wide receivers, tight ends, quarterbacks, maybe projecting out a little bit in the future as well. We're just going to be talking some ball on these players. Also, you want to hit that subscribe button. Stop missing out on our waiver wire content. We're going to be covering the waiver wire in depth this week, all week long. We're also going to help you set those lineups, get those trades done, help you win your league. Click that button right now. Stop missing out. But let's look into some of the top fantasy producers. And CeeDee Lamb is your wide receiver 1. 41 fantasy points on the week. Caught 12 balls for 158 yards, 2 touchdowns. Even had 1 rushing attempt for 12 yards. He's your top dude. Cowboys were up in this game. They were getting a lot of opportunities to score fantasy points. And then you got DeAndre Hopkins as the wide receiver 2. Will Levis throwing lasers, throwing rockets. He was the throw god out there, and that allowed Hopkins to really be the Hopkins we used to see, and maybe that's what we need. Maybe we need Will Levis out there not caring, not giving a fuck, and dropping deep balls all day long. I like seeing it. It was fun to watch, and maybe that's what we do. YOLO Ball City with Will Levis. And I hope that happens for fantasy football's sake. I don't know how great that's going to be long-term for fantasy, but they got to develop the guy. It's not like the Titans are going to win the Super Bowl or anything like that. A.J. Brown, wide receiver 3, Tyreek Hill, Jamar Chase, Jalen Waddle. We're kind of staying with the trend lines here with the top producers. Then wide receiver 7, we see Jahan Dotson here, right there. 8 catches, 108 yards and a touchdown right there. 24.8 fantasy points on the day in PPR. Think about Jahan Dotson. He's getting about 5 to 6 targets a game. We're all short. He has a shorter ADOT throughout the season, and he's been a bust so far, but he's been getting volume, and the volume was eventually going to hit in a plus matchup. He was getting about 16% target share, and usually last year, early this year, as things were trending up, he was pushing 20%. He was out producing Terry McLaurin, and we were just waiting for him to hit and do something, but he's been a bust lately. But things are starting to turn around. Howe spreads the ball around. He does, and he targets McLaurin. That's the thing about this offense. Howe's not afraid to spread the ball around. Dotson got some opportunities in this game, looked good, and that's just the thing about Dotson. He's been up and down this whole season. Curtis Samuel's had his moments, and each one of these wide receivers have had their moments in this offense. Rashid Shaheed, he's Air Yard City. Caught 3 balls, 100 yards, and a touchdown. He is the splash week guy. Honestly, it shouldn't be on waivers in 12-team leagues, honestly, because he is a lottery ticket every week, and you can play the matchups with him. You could do that, and even with the matchups, it doesn't even matter. All he has to do is bring in a deep ball here and there, and you got a game like this. So if you're hurting in your lineup, you got bye weeks. I know like week 13 has 6 bye weeks in it, and you got some injuries. Things are mounting up. You throw him in your lineup, you got to hope and prayer. Hope and prayer because he's going to hit 20-some fantasy points a couple times a year. You can't rely on it. But honestly, who you're going to pick up off waivers that can do that? Because he's going to do that off and on throughout the season. He's getting a lot of deep balls attempts. He's getting about a 17 ADOT after this game, maybe 18, 19. And he's getting consistent targets. He's getting about 15, 16% target share, 13, 15, 16, something like that. Getting volume there, almost 5 targets a game. Shaheed's a guy you just have there as a lottery ticket on the back end of your bench. Kind of like Gabe Davis. Gabe Davis has weeks like that. Devonta Smith is getting volume. Some people were labeling him as a bust a few weeks ago. And we were looking at the targets there. The volume was always there. Some games are just going to be down. Some games are going to run bad. After all, you got A.J. Brown there. You got a tight end soaking up targets. You got DeAndre Swift there to soak up targets. That's just how the cookie's going to crumble in this offense, and you're just going to have some volatility. He is the wide receiver 2 on the team. He's a wide receiver 2 who can get you wide receiver 1 results. You got to look at that. Jamison Crowder is popping up. And the thing about this is this Washington offense, they spread the ball around. Makes it hard for some of these players to be consistent. Here's another one. 7 catches, 100 yards. Nobody was expecting this. People are going to run to him off the waiver wire. The thing about that is you can't count on Washington. You can't count on the ancillary wide receivers, their hopes and prayers. Jordan Addison down there at wide receiver 13, top tier wide receiver 2 this week. Tyler Lockett surprised us against the Browns. That's solid. KJ Osborne getting opportunities in this fast-paced Vikings offense. Good to see. Top-tier wide receiver 2. Garrett Wilson, wide receiver 2 for the week. Same with Chris Godwin and Terry McLaurin. We got Commanders up here in the top of the list. Something we're noticing, Deontay Johnson's back with 16.5 fantasy points, catching 8 balls for 80 yards, 85 yards to be accurate. We got Brandon Ayuk. A slower game for him, but still over 100 yards. That's solid. But 15.9 fantasy points. You like it. You want that in your lineup. But when you look at fantasy football here in 2023, you're getting guys who are lower in wide receiver 2s getting you 15 fantasy points. 5 to 10 years ago, this is a top-tier wide receiver 2, borderline wide receiver 1. Think of it in those terms how the game has changed over this time. Calvin Ridley getting some work in. Brandon Cook surprising people with 14 fantasy points as a wide receiver 3. Josh Downs. Wide receiver 3 is not really a bust week, but it's good enough to get the job done with this threshold of scoring. I feel like if you can get 11, 10, 12 fantasy points in your lineup, you feel okay. You're not down the dumps, but you know it's not going to win your league because you got like 30 other guys outscoring you at the position. But if you're starting 3 wide receivers, 4 wide receivers in your lineups, these guys are still valuable. Kendrick Bourne showing up here. Mike Evans getting some opportunity. We got Jack Smith and Jigba starting to do some things. He's starting to heat up. This is back-to-back games, double-digit PPR fantasy points. He's starting to do some things. 3 catches, 75 yards, and a touchdown. If he's on waivers for some reason, pick him up. He's that lottery ticket. He's a first-rounder, top-tier first-rounder, highly productive out of college. Missed all of last year. Probably would have got drafted even higher in the first round. Played a full season, did what he did at Ohio State. 5-star recruit coming out of high school. A lot of people loved him coming out. And Jack Smith the Jig was that dude. He's got those skills. Let him ramp up a little bit. Be patient with some of these younger guys. But those top-tier younger dudes who are rookies, especially, when they have first-round draft status, you've seen them be good at the college level like that, and they're starting off slow. Be patient. Hold on to them as tight as you can. Jaden Reed getting some opportunities. I can't wait to see the target share with him. He got 6 targets in this game, 4 catches, 83 yards. The advanced metrics aren't out. This is early in the morning on Monday. So once those come out, I'll have more content on these players. I like to go over the workload metrics, especially the air yards, target share, and everything according to that. But again, we're in wide receiver 40 range, and we're still getting 10 fantasy points. DK Metcalf, Cortland Sutton, Michael Thomas. So with these guys in your lineup, you're feeling, okay. They didn't really bottom out on you. They're kind of usable. They're helping you. They're not getting you like 5 fantasy points. But you know what? Quentin Johnston getting you a little bit there with 10. Best performance of his career. 6 targets, 5 catches, 50 yards. 50 yards. Maybe we're starting to see a trend line here. Remember, the season's still young for football, especially for these younger guys. Michael Wilson right behind him. Rashee Rice with 9.6. He was due for a low game because he's very, very much like a roller coaster with his scoring. He's usually every other game. He popped off with 3 straight games with double-digit PPR scoring weeks. So, Rashee Rice should be on the bottom. He was just due. Chris Olave down there, I mean, he's been dealing with that arrest situation from speeding, so maybe that was in his head a bit. But still, DJ Moore at wide receiver 50. Top guys looking good. Let's look at the running backs real quick. I expect the running backs to dip down pretty quick. So let's see here. We're getting in the single-digit range at RB23. So wide receivers a lot deeper. Christian McCaffrey's your RB1. No surprise there. Probably would have guessed that in the beginning of the week. Gus Edwards, your surprise play. Kind of not really. It's against Arizona. Everybody runs on Arizona. The trend from that game is know that everybody runs on Arizona and scores fantasy points against Arizona. That's the trend. Not Gus Edwards going to the moon. Arizona puts people to the moon. Alvin Kamara getting touches, targets, getting opportunities, 27 fantasy points. Travis Etienne doing Etienne things. Want to watch that ankle throughout the week. Austin Eckler, RB5 on the week, so it looks like we're getting back on track. Breece Hall, RB6, 21.3 fantasy points. Getting used heavily in the passing game with 9 targets. That's good to see. Rashad White, RB9. Javonte Williams, RB8, 18.8 fantasy points. Got a lot of workload in this game with 27 rushing attempts. Saquon Barkley, 36 rushing attempts and just RB11. On top of that, 41 opportunities when you add in the 5 targets. Just RB11, 15.8 PPR fantasy points. Just nasty, tough, ugly game. They're running him to death. They are running him to death. I mean, let's sort these by attempts here real quick because we can. 36 is the top guy by almost 10. Javante because of the game script. After that, you only got a few more guys here in the 20 range. And then that's it on the rush attempts. And then when you look at the targets for the running backs, he's one of the tops in targets also. Just a hell of a workload for the week. We got to see how long that's going to last. Breece Hall led all running backs with 9 targets. Austin Eckler with 8. Christian McCaffrey with 7. Rashad White with 7. Looking good. See, back to the fantasy points though. Zach Moss right now is RB1. Probably going to change after the Monday night game. Same with DeAndre Swift. Kareem Hunt got you a little bit of production, but really it's not too far off. So if you're the RB10, say Derrick Henry, 16 fantasy points, RB25, not too much off from the RB25-ish range, like 6 point something points. Kind of looking like the tight end position almost, where like you can take shots at running back if you're hurting, shoot for that upside, and say they give you 9 fantasy points, shit, or even 6. Are you really hurting that bad? Are you really missing out? I mean, I would like those extra 6 or 7 fantasy points, but is that really going to impact your matchup that bad? Honestly, and maybe if it's tight, but still, think of it in those realms. Maybe we need to be shooting more upside like we do with the tight end position, playing the matchups here. We got Tony Pollard down there, sitting down there at the bottom there. 12 rush attempts, 53 yards, 4.4 yards per carry. I mean, from a production standpoint, not the greatest. Decent matchup. I want to go back and see that. Everything I've seen was on Red Zone because you got to keep track of all the games. I hate Red Zone because you feel like you got to take so much caffeine to keep up with everything, and you want to know everything, and it's so hard to do that. But if you just watch one game, you just know one game. Breece Hall, 21.3 fantasy points though, 9 targets, looking good. A lot of people were talking about Dalvin Cook this week, about whether or not to pick him up. It's the Breece Hall show. It's the Breece Hall show. There's really nothing too different here at running back. We got Darrington Evans sneaking in there for Chicago as Roshan versus Donta Foreman all week. And then Darrington Evans said, hey, don't forget about me. I'm going to get some touches. But 4 touches, 18 yards, and a touchdown. Honestly, that's it. If you score a touchdown, you're going to have something in fantasy production. That's the thing. Very few running backs score touchdowns and get you hardly any fantasy production. You see it like that. Right there. There's all the running backs that scored touchdowns on fullback Andrew Beck. Andrew Beck got you 5.9. So Cam Akers, Darrington Evans. I mean, we're really hoping a lot of these running backs cross the goal line in the rushing department. Also catch some balls. That's where you're at here in fantasy. Those are the top guys. Going to quarterback real quick. Sam Howell right now is the QB1. And it really depends on your scoring. Right now, I just got on fantasydata.com. Basic PBR scoring right now. Sam Howell, QB1. Josh Allen, QB2. Dak Prescott had himself a day with over 300 yards and 4 touchdowns. Joe Burrow had a decent game here against the Niners. Jalen Hurts as well. And this is all on a production standpoint. And then we got Will Levis. There's the trend line there. This dude does not give a fuck, and he throws lasers downfield. He throws deep balls. He's going to have a lot of air yards, and he has a gun on him. He has a rocket. He may not be the best for NFL football, especially during his developmental standpoint right now. However, for fantasy, he helps this team. He spreads it downfield. They got to spread that defense now. They got to cover the top end. They got to stay in state coverage a little bit. They can't let DeAndre Hopkins run deep. This helps Henry. This helps the offense. The Will Levis at quarterback just makes this fun to watch. I'll say this. I'm not going to say it's going to be necessarily better. You let me know if you're a Titans fan. But he's fun to watch. Dobbs here getting some action. Taysom Hill. Yeah, it really depends if your league has him at tight end or quarterback. Here he's at quarterback, 22.46 fantasy points. Tua out there. Baker Mayfield, borderline QB1 range after today's games. Derek Carr, Brock Purdy, Trevor Lawrence here, QB2. Jordan Love, QB2. Geno, CJ Stroud a lower week. Kind of expect that as a rookie here and there on some games. You can't expect everything to be gravy. I was expecting him to be more productive, though, against the Carolina Panthers. I was expecting this game script to pop off a little bit. It did not. It was slower. It was not a high-scoring affair. That was a big miss on my part. Lamar Jackson down there, 11.98 fantasy points. So, again, those are your top quarterbacks. Looking at the tight ends real quick, and I know we got a guy here that we're going to be excited about. Trey McBride. We talked about him last week. The thing is, Ertz being out, him getting his usual targets, him getting the Ertz targets, that's a good marination of workload there, and getting those short to intermediate targets as well. So I have 14 targets in this game. Led all tight ends in targets, 25.5 fantasy points. George Kittle right behind him. TJ Hawkinson right behind him. Then we got Cole Kmet showing up too. People asking about him. The thing about the tight end position, once you get to these jabronis, McBride, Kmet, you play the matchups, you see what happens. Baltimore was a decent matchup for McBride. Good opportunity there. And the Chargers matchup was good for Kmet. That's a good one to look at. Dalton Kincaid doing some things. Like, this was young tight end week. This was the week for the young tight end. That's why we did 4 or 5 videos on the young guys who are starting to see more routes, snaps, and opportunities. That's why we covered them extensively last week, because tight ends don't usually bring in the numbers for the channel. But still, that was information that needed to be out there. Play the matchups with tight end. Ferguson doing some good things. Thomas has been doing some good things. Mark Andrews down. Even the top tight ends are a little bit volatile. Look at Mark Andrews and Travis Kelce. They're doing all right in scoring. This was a good week in scoring for the tight end position. Usually you're dropping off in fantasy points around this range, tight end 8 to 10 range. Usually you're about hitting single digit right there. But we're extending out in the tight end 2 range. Tight end 2, I consider tight end 1 the top 3 to 5 range, because those are actually the fantasy scorers in that position that helps you. After that, tight end 10, the drop off between that and like 25 isn't much. A little bit different this week. Usually it's about 5 to 6 points a week, the variance between like a tight end 10 and a tight end 25. That being said, when I'm playing matchups, I like to shoot for upside. That way, when I'm answering your questions, though, for your lineups, I'll let you know this guy's a little safer, but I do this guy because of upside. You do you, though, if you want to play it safe. But that's why I shoot for upside at this position. Looking at the running backs, I want to look at their trend lines a little bit more. That might be more of an upside play as well, or just hoping for the running back to just fall over the goal line, just as gambles for upside. Because the same thing we're seeing at that position, kind of similar to the tight end, where the back-end tight end 1s, back-end RB 1s aren't too far off from the back-end RB 2s, tight end 2s. So why not play the position different? But those are the trend lines from the top scorers from Week 8. We still have the Monday night game. Those will be thrown into the data. But I wanted to do something new this morning since I had a little bit of extra time. Let me know what you think in the comments below. I want to hear about it. Make sure you hit that subscribe button on the way out. Catch you on the next